Okay, we're back with another fun-filled adventure in working on stuff, and in this particular case what we're working on is replacing the driver's side front fender, which is pretty badly rusted. Let's see if I can show you this with my trouble light. Oh yeah, baby, she's shot. So I'm not going to go through every single nut and bolt here because there are plenty of other videos out on YouTube about replacing the front fenders on a Jeep TJ, because the front fenders are one of those weak points on a TJ that like to rust out. But I am going to talk when I encounter problems or challenges, issues, whatever. And the first step is this, I guess, tray down here, and getting it off. Now, in order for access purposes, first I removed this, which I think is part of the evaporation, and removed the bracket where it sat, which is right on the top of the fender. I've got some more stuff that I need to remove over here, but one step at a time. And so can't get the fender off without removing this thing, and of course removing this thing is a bit of a problem because the bolts that secure this tray, there are 4 of them, typically rust in place. On the bottom side of the tray, they are not held on by normal nuts. They're held on by these, I'll call them threaded clips, for lack of a better way to describe it. I don't have the remnants of one of them to show you handy, but anyway, take my word for it. They're held on by clips and not by regular nuts. And those clips tend to rust away and get stuck, so that all they do is spin. So this one I was successful at using a Dremel cutoff tool to get off, but the rest of them I had to drill out. That looks like a nut, but it isn't. I used the cutoff tool and got through a little bit more than half, and then ran out of room. So then I took a drill and I drilled it out. So that's what I did with the other 3. I drilled out the nuts the bolts to free the tray. So the tray is now removable. I put it back in just to show you where it goes. It's there you can see part of the clip thing, but oh no, that's not the clip thing. There's one that was it's not clipped. That's one of the bolt holes. That's the other bolt hole, and 3rd and 4th. So these welded on nuts are for something else, and you can see an outline. Where is it? Where'd it go? You can see an outline of the clip here, the rust stained fingerprint of what it looked like. But so now the tray is out, and it's pretty sad, but it's salvageable. And now I've got the superstructure below access in order to continue to get this fender off. And I'm going to need to access these bolts down this way. I think the light can show them all. There they are. Those bolts have to come out, and that's really what you need access for. But this member here, I believe that this is removable, and it is in pretty sorry shape. So once I get the fender off, I am going to remove it and recondition it. And so the moral of the story is, in terms of removing the fender, you got to get that tray off. The chances are that you are not going to be able to simply unbolt it, that you will have to drill out the bolts. And I would just go underneath, because you can see the bolts on the underside if you get underneath the car. And in my case, I have the car, let's get some light down here. I've got the car jacked up and the tire off for ease of access. And you might as well just bite the bullet. Make sure that you have a good set of drill bits available, and you probably will need extras for this, and extra drill bits, that is, to get that tray off. And so that's it in terms of notations for how to get the driver's side fender off. And my next step is going to be to get the rest of this bracketry off the top of the fender before I start to unbolt the fender from the car. And so that's it. So when we next meet, it'll be something else I need to point out to you. I'll see you later. Bye. Okay, we're back with another quick discussion in our efforts to remove the driver's side fender with the intention of replacing it, because this fender is all rusted out right beneath here. So it's got to go. So I think I've got everything that was attached to the fender off, except for the fender flares. These bolts that are holding on the fender flare are seized into their mating, I guess, I don't know if they're nutserts or what they are under there, but I'll have to cut them off after I get the fender off. Not necessarily because I don't have the, well, yeah, I do not have the tool, and that's because my Dremel cutoff tool over there has bit the dust or bit the rust, and it has died on me, so I'm gonna have to go out and get a replacement. And so that is for the next road trip. I'm not going to do that immediately because I have other tools that I can use in the meantime. But anyway, so I think I've got everything off that needs to come off. So going from front to back, we have the horns. That's one of the two horns that goes in here, and so they came off without too much difficulty. The wiper reservoir, the wiper fluid reservoir, which went right here, that came off, no biggie. This stuff, this equipment being held on by a bracket, that came off fairly easy, but there is going to be a challenge here, and that challenge is that the bracket is corroded. And you certainly don't, or I certainly don't, want to put a corroded bracket back on a brand new fender and encourage the new fender to start rusting before it's time, so to speak. So, not sure what I'm going to do there, except that I do want to somehow get that bracket off and recondition it. Here's the bracket for the horn, and it is pretty badly rusted, and I'm certainly not going to put that back on here on the new fender in its current state. That will have to be reconditioned in some way, and when I say some way, I'm either going to derust it using the electrolysis method, or I'm going to just take an angle grinder to it and grind off all the rust till I get shiny metal and then repaint it. But either way, the rusty brackets have to be dealt with before they go back on the new fender. And that's a key point as you consider, and hopefully what you're doing, if you're watching this video, you're watching this video before you tackle your own fender job. You do need to factor in the time that it will take to recondition all of this rusted bracketry, or have replacements ready. Or third option is, you know, if you reuse the brackets as is and without reconditioning them or doing something to keep the rust off the new fender, you're going to obviously encourage the rust to spread into the fender, and you're going to wind up back in the same boat at some point in the future. I can't say when, but of course it will happen. So it's certainly my intention to recondition the bracketry at the very least where it meets the fender, to try and keep the rust away for as long as possible. So that means that having this Jeep completely put back together and on the road is not going to be anytime soon once I get the old fender off and the new fender back on. There's a lot more work to be done after that. So anyway, so that's it for now, and on until the next observation. Hopefully I won't have too many more problems, and you'll see me next after this fender has been removed. We'll see. In the meantime, stay tuned. Alrighty then, I got the fender off, and there's quite a bit of work to be done before putting the new fender back on. The remaining bolts didn't give me too much trouble, except one, or over here with the light, one of these bolts on the inside of the fender well was stuck, and this is a good example of these clips that I've been talking about, rather than nuts for these bolts, and those clips basically rust out. Very bad design by Jeep, but that's the driver's side of the car. There's a lot of access here with the fender off. I may take the drive shaft off to get at that bracket and derust it, because that bracket that holds that drive shaft bushing is hard to find if you have to replace it. And this piece here needs to come off to be reconditioned to get rid of all the rust. There's one nut. Is it showing up? Anyway, there's one nut in there that's, I think there it is. That's rusted up, and it's probably going to cause me problems getting off. But, what did I do? Sorry about that. The zoom button is in an easy place to accidentally bump. Give me a better picture. I can't see. Anyway, there's rust on the inboard side of this thing, and that involves one of these nuts, and that is probably going to be a bit difficult to get off. But off it must come, because that thing, that piece there, whatever it's called, this thing is a mess, and it needs to be reconditioned before I bolt a new fender to it. The frame in this area looks good. Tiny bit of surface rust, nothing to be concerned about, other than that bushing for the steering bracket, which does concern me. Not the bushing itself, but the bracket. So I will probably deal with that before I put everything back together. But got some rust going on over here on the nose that we're going to need to deal with. That will treat with POR 15. And then here is the, are we completely zoomed out? We are. Here is the old fender, and that is why we're replacing the fender. There is almost nothing left of the top of the fender, so another bad design, because what happens is this plate here has a void in it, and moisture gets trapped inside, rust starts, you can't get at it, and so from there it's inevitable death. So we'll take all the accessories off this fender before, I will take all of these accessories off this fender before I dispose of it. The side light, the front blinker, and of course the flare, which is rusted on, will have to be cut off. All that in due time. So This is not a one-day project. That's my point, is that if you're going to be tackling this project and you've got an old rust bucket TJ like mine, this is going to be a multiple day project before you're going to be ready to put that fender back on, assuming that you want the fender to last at least another 20 years, which is almost exactly how old this fender is. This is a 2001 Jeep TJ. It's now 2021. TJ is 20 years old and rusting away. And it was a Northeast car, so a lot of this is road salt, and what isn't road salt is beach salt, because this vehicle was, after I bought it, realized that it was a beach car at some point in its life, and the reason I know that is because the old frame was full of sand when it was swapped out. So anyway, so I'm going to start with the reconditioning job. First, I'm going to clean up the lovely mess that I've made, get organized here, and get this one part off, and start rehabilitating stuff before I put the new fender back on. So that's where we are. Until the next update, see ya. Wondering what this all is? Well, this is my derusting apparatus. A little high school chemistry going on here. We have a electrolytic solution made out of water and baking soda, and a little bit of electricity, DC electricity, 12 volts, 2 amps, and I am derusting the brackets that bolt onto the fender for the Jeep TJ. So that I can repaint them, because I'm not going to put rusty brackets back on a brand new fender. So just thought that I would show you my little improvised tank here, and every so often when that scummy stuff accumulates on the top, I will skim it off and eventually dump it out. Anyway, just thought I would show you how I am derusting the bracketry associated with the fender. It sure beats having to do it by hand, because that takes time and energy, and it's hard on the tools. I've already burned out 2 Dremels. This way, while I'm working or playing, the electrolytic is very quietly doing its work to remove the rust from the brackets. So just thought that I would share that. Okay, on to the next update. Bye. Okay, continue on our adventure in dealing with rust issues on the Jeep TJ in the wintertime. This is a structural member that helps support the front driver's side fender. I have successfully removed it, and I have prepped it for painting. And the way that I prepped it is, first I put it in an electrolysis bath to remove the rust, because there was quite a bit. Anywhere you see bare metal here was previously all rusted out. So the electrolysis removed all of the rust, hopefully, and I then sanded what was left. I decided not to completely remove the paint, and we'll see if that was a wise decision or a bad decision in due course. I guess this is going to be a bit of an experiment. We're going to take a slightly different approach. The brackets that were on the top of the fender, I have completely removed all of the paint, derusted using electrolysis, then removed the remaining paint with a chemical paint remover so that it was all bare metal, then primed it with Rust-Oleum primer, which actually you can see on this newspaper because I painted the bracketry in the same place. But here I'm going to do something a little bit different, and well, not a little, a lot, in the sense that I'm not going to take it down to the bare metal all the way around. This is a complicated shaped part that would take quite a while, and so I'm going to see if cutting that corner here is going to cause me a problem down the road or not. But in the meantime, I'm also going to use a different product. So I am going to be using Eastwood's Rust Encapsulator Platinum and their Chassis Black top coat paint. So the instructions call for one medium coat of the Rust Encapsulator Platinum and then to top coat it. So I'm going to do that in just a short time here. I'm in the process of preparing, and according to the instructions printed on the can, the platinum encapsulator is pretty nasty stuff, and since it is wintertime, I have heaters going, and this stuff is purported to be highly flammable. So I'm getting the garage warmed up enough so that I can then turn the heaters off while I very quickly, or as quickly as possible, paint this part, and then we'll hopefully, as the garage cools down, the paint will cure, and at some point I'll be able to turn the heaters back on. I probably will be able to keep the electric heater going, but definitely the propane heater is going to have to be turned off, because I really don't want to blow myself up or burn my house down for that matter. So that's what we're going to do, and we're going to get started shortly, and I assume that you guys are not terribly interested in watching me paint, so I'll show you the end result after it's done. Okay, we'll be back. Okay, continuing in the saga of replacing the front fenders, I just wanted to show you that there's a little bit more to replacing the front fender than replacing the front fender. All these brackets that you see here attach to the front driver's side fender, or parts of these bracketry that support some of these brackets, if you will. This part is the lower body support. This bolts to the chassis, or the body tub at the bottom, and the fender bolts onto this thing at the bottom, and this is part of the vapor recycling bracketry that also bolts onto the fender, and this is another part of that vapor or EGR, I'm not sure which, but it certainly is a bracket that that bolts onto the fender. And this bracket, I'm not sure where it goes, somewhere on the nose, underneath, I think, as I said, the nose of the fender support bracket of some kind. And these two brackets are for the horns. And lastly, this tray is for some sort of accessory that I don't have on my 2.5. But still, it was rusted and a total pain to remove, and it bolts back onto the fender, or actually I think it bolts back onto this part here. So anyway, I have completely derusted all of these parts using the electrolysis method, and then I primed them with Rust-Oleum gray primer, 2 coats of primer, and then up to 5 coats of VHT chassis satin black paint. So except for this one, I had some of the Eastwood super duper silver colored, what do they call it, platinum, rust preventative paint. So I used that and I brushed this on. I didn't spray paint it. And then I had the Eastwood what they call top coat in satin black, and I also brushed it on. It doesn't look as quote unquote nice as the brackets that I've spray painted, although if you look closely you can see the finish, the places where the brackets were rusted underneath the new finish paint. But anyway, this was brushed, and that's okay because nobody is going to see it unless you get underneath the car or unless you remove the fender. So hopefully this will last for also years to come, but it'll also be a bit of an experiment to see how well that platinum rust encapsulator and the Eastwood top coat works. So every year I'm going to do a rust hunt on this old Jeep, and we'll see how long these brackets last before they start rusting again. So I certainly wasn't going to take a brand new fender and bolt on rusty old brackets to it and then just have the rust grow from there, if you will. So these are all the brackets that are associated with the fender itself. I have one more bracket that I am currently doing the electrolysis bath for, and that's the bracket that holds on the steering, the intermediate steering linkage. And the reason that I'm doing that is just a might as well, because it's easy to get at while the fender is off. So I removed it. It was heavily rusted, and so that thing is now soaking in the electrolysis bath and will for a few more days. And of course that means since that mounting bracket for the intermediate steering shaft is off the car, and I am not in any rush to put this all back together until that bracket is painted, fully derusted and painted, and so it's going to be at least another week before I get the driver's side fender back on. In the meantime, I've got all the nuts and bolts soaking in evaporust to get them as free of rust as possible, with of course the objective that there will be no rust coming back for hopefully a good long number of years to come if I've been successful in my efforts here. So I just wanted to show you that there's more to replacing the fender than just replacing the fender. If you're of the school that says, hey, you don't care if the brackets are rusted, you're just going to slap them back on, more power to you. But my objective here is to hold the rust at bay for as long as I can, and part of that, of course, is removing all of the rust and repainting all of these brackets to keep them rust free. So they'll go back on the car after the fender is mounted, except for this. This has to go back on the car before the fender is mounted, since this is a major support bracket for the fender itself. Down at the bottom of the wheel well at the firewall. That's where this bolts onto, and I am treating that. The firewall has some rust, and I'm treating that with the POR 15, and I just put my first coat of Eastwood top coat over that, so we'll see how that works as well. So that's it. I just wanted to show you what I'm doing here relative to replacing the fenders, and onward and upward until the next update. Bye for now.